and welcome to the Everyday Entrepreneur. We sound so professional, but this is only our third time that we've done this. Today I have my special guest, Deb Papish, and again, Deb likes to talk, as do I, so we share that. So, you know, the one thing I will say about Deb is that she runs a nonprofit, and again, I believe in a profitable nonprofit. You believe in a profitable nonprofit, so we're going to have you talk about that. Tell us about DEF.
So the Dublin Education Foundation was founded in 1999, and for all of these years, we're going on our 26th year now, we have been funding innovative teacher practices in Dublin City schools. I'm currently the vice president of the DEF, and for years we seemed to be swimming along pretty well, but realized probably about 7 years ago that we needed to make some changes to become more sustainable. It took us a few years to get the right people in place to be sustainable. Our president, Melissa Bogner, is an outstanding leader, and I knew when I first met her at another like a gathering of people in Dublin City schools, that she was the perfect fit for us to help lead, rise up at 10,000 feet and make us be the best versions of ourselves. And when you know that leader, that's important, and it would make the rest of the cogwheel take place, right?
Totally understand. So now why do I have you an entrepreneurial business podcast, right? And I think the reality is that, like, if you look at for-profit, nonprofit social businesses, right, you said it, right? You have to become sustainable. You have to be a profitable nonprofit, whether you're getting it from your donors, whether you're running events, whether you're doing whatever you're doing to do this. So like the reason that I want you on this is because we met at MESH, and not only do you support your own organization, right, but you support every single small business that I've ever seen come in contact with you. So tell me about passion, right? What gets you up in the morning? What drives you?
Well, my background is in education. So I started out as a teacher. I am a mom, but I'm a huge supporter of public education. I think that it is the thread that goes throughout our nation that helps people get a great start in what we're doing, and it's available to everybody. So I've always been able to see where the holes are in a project, whatever I'm working on, and try to fill those holes. But what we know is that we can't fill the holes by ourselves as well as we can with a family of other do good, right? Systemic people.
Okay, and when you say we know, who's we? No, it's you, right? Because there's certain entrepreneurs, right? I always say inventor versus entrepreneur. That entrepreneur literally sees problems, puts solutions in its place, and keep going, right? So to me, that's exactly when you say that's what you do, that's when I get the goosebumps, because I'm like, yeah, that's what you're doing on a daily basis, right? With a small nonprofit or a large business. But so keep going, sorry.
So for me anyway, a family of doers is better than doing one thing alone. I mean, you said it in the beginning of the podcast that we are both talkers. Well, it's not as much fun for me to talk to myself, although I've done that many times. It's better to have a lot of victims for me to talk to. So that's what I do, is I bring in the people, and I know who's passionate about different parts of our community, and I seem to have, it's something that naturally comes to me to see where the fit is. So if I see a hole, I have an idea or an inkling at least of who the different partners might be to fill that hole, but I want them to get something out of it as much as me doing the ask. So I was always raised, in my family anyway, my mom and dad always said, make sure that you pay it forward first, and then, when things need to happen, probably you've sown enough seeds that things can come into play. And I feel like I've been blessed enough that does happen. So I just concentrate on doing things that can help others. And then when something comes up and I need help on my team, then those people are already in place because we already have established relationships, which is number one. There's trust that has been built, and other people's talents and skills and strategies, right? So all of those things are built in a very authentic way, so that when that business piece needs to come in, you're already set up. And I just think that's how my mind works. My dad was a huge community collaborator, so I grew up around that. My mom was a hard worker, and she lives with us now, and I know that she looks at what I do and thinks, I'm so glad she has fun because she works a lot on it.
Well, yeah, and you do. I mean, because again, when you say works a lot, you do it every day.
Yeah.
Right, and again, I'm lucky enough to see it, but I think what people don't understand is that 10 years ago, we had the first business, or we being me and my partners, the first co-hatch was a MESH, right? So we're over at Bridge Park. I remember doing our first, the opening, and like we called it Share the Love Wall. And
Yeah.
like, we raised like $7-8 grand. And again, you helped with that. That was amazing, right? But like, and again, we fast forward, like I ended up seeing you and you start working here and you start, like, I think you were really pushing Dublin Education Foundation at like it was 3 years ago or something like that.
Yes,
So you
yes.
changed and you were trying to do a little more sustainability on it. And like, then I see you here every day and it's like every day you're doing what I need help with, right? Which is always, if we have 44 like locations, we need people who are connecting dots, right? And like, you literally, every time I see you, you're talking to someone, learning about them. You genuinely care, which is
Yes.
that's, I don't know if
I
it's a
think
skill or a
it is
passion.
helpful to want to build other people up. And I would say that our DEF team, it's not just me, it is Melissa, it is our entire board. We chose people to serve with us that have the same passion, but maybe everybody doesn't have that same commitment level or can't because maybe they're raising children, working full-time, all of those things. But we have our little board partners in place that can help us. But the biggest thing is when we're in this space, first of all, may I just say to Cohatch, we are so grateful that you, Matt, and the team allow us to be here. As a Give Scholar, we are able to do our work, have some professional, I wouldn't call it licensing, but a stamp of approval.
Right.
Because we have a place that we can meet. And that is so helpful to somebody who's a nonprofit. We don't have an office. Our overhead is very low. None of us are paid. We're a full volunteer board.
Yeah.
We do not have a paid director. This allows us to feel like we have all those bells and whistles that many nonprofits have.
100%.
So
And we,
if
like,
we
and
have
we
it here,
appreciate
you have
it.
to
And-
give
yeah.
back to that, right? And you're working here every day. You want to be able to know people. I met everybody in Cohatch, some of the people we knew from Mesh when we were over there working out. Sometimes I talked. I should have a really firm jawline from all of my yapping.
I do. I
you
remember
know.
you say that joke too every time too when you were working
But
out.
it's
That's good.
true. We met
no, I
Terry
get
and
it. You guys are,
everyone.
every
Yeah.
time I'd walk in, it'd be you and your girls. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
you guys were like having fun.
Yeah. So you got to have fun. I think it's really important to, if you're in a space like Cohatch, whether you are a Give Scholar, a small business, or a larger business. I mean, we have people from IBM here that we work with. We probably would never be working next to somebody from IBM if we were just at the library working, or we wouldn't be in the capacity to be able to build a relationship. But here we work with Joe, from IBM and other leaders from other companies. And it doesn't matter if it's large or small. If there's a piece that fits for them, this is the place where we learn that. So we learn it over coffee, we learn it over lunch. I mean, how many times do you see several people from different businesses and nonprofits? We're all chatting at the kitchen bar, right?
100%.
This space gives us that. If I need something, I might just talk over coffee at the bar or while we're sitting down and say, hey, do you know anybody that does this, that, or the other? And typically, I would say 9 times out of 10, somebody here that we're talking to goes, let me put you in contact with somebody.
100%.
Where do you get that? I mean, people pay to belong to large networking communities, and they pay big money for that. Just by being at Cohatch and being visible, and you can't just be here. You can't sit in a corner table and just sit there and do your work and look at your computer screen.
Right.
But if you invest the time into just saying, hey, at the refrigerator, or when you pass somebody going to the loo, you're in good standing. And everyone here has such a trust relationship. I mean, here's a really good example. Last week, Terry, or a week and a half ago, Terry sent people, and Terry being from Titan, right?
Yeah.
So he builds out Cohatches, and I've
he's
known
Cohatch.
him.
He
He is
is the part
Cohatch,
of
right?
Cohatch.
But he's
Titan, yes.
right. But he is part of the family from when I first met everybody at Mesh.
He builds these things with his bare hands, right? He built Mesh with his bare hands.
Right, and his heart is in it. We know his wife now. I mean, there's so many different parts of that. He told us that he was sending his crew that works on our buildings down to Florida to work on Sandy Pants, which is the Cohatch vacation sort of place. The thought that he was using his time, energy, resources to do something like that for something that's part of the company, but the outreach in the community, I heard later that those men were able to take sand and move it with their earth moving equipment. They helped neighbors around Sandy Pants on Anna Maria Island to get their things out to the curb after they were done with their work. It went beyond. The ripple effect was happening. I mean, this is in real time. This is happening right now, right? We have Hurricane Milton getting ready to head in again. They closed up shop and they just left yesterday. But the impact
And they
that
unfortunately might have to go
Cohatch-
back, right?
I
So-
know, and it breaks my heart, and I've had them in my thoughts and in my prayers, as everybody has. But the fact that in this company, I get to know those little parcels of what goes on, like, where does that happen in other companies? Do you see that heart piece?
Well-
And it's something that's happening on the national stage right now.
Yeah.
I am so grateful and so proud to be part of Cohatch. It's like I work here for Cohatch, but I don't. And everybody should feel like that. So how do we get there? That's the question.
And I think, I mean, honestly, first of all, it's teaching people how to, first of all, you got to get out of your space. That makes 100% sense, right? And like, I think for us, we can give direct impact and indirect impact. And the real like impact that we do is you, like bringing you to a location. And, because if you think about it, everyone's part of a local community, right? So whether you work for a multinational corporation, you still have you still want to be
Yes,
involved, but
yes.
it has to
That's
be
true.
convenient, right?
Yeah.
It has to be convenient to co-work. It has to be convenient to meet people. And it's like, if somebody asks me to get coffee, now I have to make a commitment. But if I'm walking around on a Friday at 3 o'clock and somebody's sitting here and they ask me a question, I'll answer it, right? Like, no
Right.
problem. So, and it just starts to happen naturally when you have those times. It has to be convenient. When are you going to give? Like, when we do direct impact, we'll have a lot of our members help us with that. But really, the real benefit that Cohatch Community does is 800 Boost and Give scholarships so that we're told, you don't owe us anything. Go do what you do best, right? And that's really, when I look at you, you take it to the next level because you're actually helping everybody too, and you believe to pay it back. There's a lot of nonprofits that like we're not asking for them to pay us back, right? Like what we want them to do is pay back to the community, and it really does when you're looking through all this. If you don't hit all these different levels of a person's life, then it makes it difficult for them to survive, be passionate, be successful, and all those different things. So, I mean, again, I look at it, you've talked to so many small businesses, you've talked to so many like nonprofits, like what's your favorite one here, besides your own?
Well, okay, so let's talk about a couple of, it's hard to find like a favorite, but I would say some people.
I know I'll get you to say who your favorite is.
So, well, we like people. So I look at different chapters that we have here. So our chapter of like a small business chapter, like a medium company and a larger one.
You have chapters here.
I do. Like
in your head?
In my
or,
head.
Okay, they're in your head, okay.
They're in my bun.
Well, I just want to
They're
listen.
in my
I
bun.
mean, like
This-
if you
this
wanted to
little
create a
bun,
networking
yeah.
group, that's the whole thing. Anyone can do whatever they want,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they just have to get people to actually care and do it.
Right, and I would say that, and I always speak and say we, like me and my mouse in my pocket, but it
Sure.
really is our team. So it's Melissa and I look, and it's not anything that we set out every day and go, okay, well, let's go, hit this and hit this and hit this. Like we are very organized in our approach, thanks to Melissa, but a lot of the organic stuff that happens is it's a match. So Joe Baroy from IBM is somebody who we met last year while we were planning our very first Elevate Education event in like January, February. We were here every day from like the morning until sometimes late at night.
Sure.
Joe was also here morning, sometimes noon, and sometimes late at night. And on the weekend, one time, we were here, and we were planning out our tables and who would be sitting with whom, right? So we were laying all of that kind of stuff out. Seems like something that could be done, with a computer program. But Melissa knows how I am, and she's like, Deb, I brought you plates and little sticky notes, and I want you to write down everybody, and then we're gonna do it this old-fashioned way because that makes you happy. Right? So everything that we do is to make us happy. Joe is over here working on a project on a weekend, on a Saturday, and he comes over and we start chit-chatting. That was the start of it. But if both of us weren't dedicated to our realms on a Saturday and had a space to meet, we would have never met. He this year is going to be one of our supporting table sponsors at our upcoming event. We are so excited. He is thinking in these innovative ways also. Instead of just courting his business clients to a restaurant, he's thinking, I'm going to bring them to something that is meaningful in our community. And Dublin Education Foundation is meaningful in our community. So they get to have dinner, they get to mingle, but they're also coming and supporting a local nonprofit that he is passionate about. He has now extended that. Last week I was here working, and it was later in the afternoon, and he had somebody from IBM out in New Hampshire, I believe. So she was in, and we're talking over at the kitchen bar over coffee, and she said, I'm interested in this. So we got to speak to somebody that's out of the New Hampshire section. When would we have that opportunity? So grateful. So now she is thinking about coming and getting a table, but those are how things build out. I did not have an inclination, okay, I'm gonna stay here until 6 o'clock that night because I'm gonna start securing tables for an event. That's not what that was about. It was me doing my work and just being cognizant of what goes on around me. So probably a little bit of my ADHD brain looking around, right? Which you may or may not know that.
I mean, I assume it was undiagnosed,
yes,
but I mean,
mine
clearly.
is definitely undiagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have a little touch of something. But again, using that thing that some people could look at as a negative, I use it as a positive. You and I are people who can keep a lot of different ideas floating around, capture what we want to work on it, and move forward.
Well, yeah, and get everybody else to do all the work.
Well, yes, but you do work too, and so do I, but also that. So anyhow, that would be one reason why I feel close to Joe and IBM and now his other partner, because we just would not be able to capture that. It takes a person.
And I
right?
think, again, like it goes to local, and I don't use that word as like when I think startup, or when most people think of startup, they think of these well-funded startups, right? And we do have some, like Apricity Robotics is here. They're amazing. They're good people. But the reality is that
I need a meeting with them.
Well, 80% of our business is,
robotics.
Those guys won't have money for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And again, if they fund and they do everything the right, it's a completely different game than most of the small businesses that start at a lot of the Boost Scholars.
Right.
And it's the same thing with nonprofits. When I look at big nonprofits, they're corporate nonprofits. I'm not saying they're not doing a great thing for the world, but for us, it's, we have a group, and again, I always forget their names, but they literally just write nice notes to people. And during the pandemic, I'd walk into UA. I mean, I've seen them for almost 10 years now, right? Writing nice notes to people, and that's all they do. And again, it's very local, and it's they can afford what they do, how they keep it stabilized. You don't have to reinvent the world to have that passion. And I think that's really what impact. I try to get people. Well, and that's where it's like, how do you really do
impact,
it, right?
So passion
what's
and
your
impact.
Advice to? I mean, again, it's just like anything shouldn't be started out of your house because you don't have the time to meet all these people. So what would be your advice to someone? I mean, is your advice literally to go get a Coach membership? Because that's not, I mean, honestly, if that's what it is, great. I'll take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm not gonna,
that I have.
But I mean, the reality is that there are other things finding your passion. I mean, how do you do that? How do you,
I think you have to, as busy as my mind is on a daily basis, and I am involved in a lot of different things across the community, I know where my passion is, and it does center on education in some way, but it's not just education in the school, it's educating parents, it's educating community members. I work on levies a lot in the district and have done that for, 31 years now. And I know that can always get political, but that is just one way that I have gotten to know.
You were the leprechaun, the grand leprechaun in Dublin, so you must be over the politics.
Well,
right?
I just work to do the good, and whatever that is, it works, right?
Well, so, and that's, I mean, and again,
we do have to bridge.
It feels good to be
people.
around you, and that's where it's
thanks.
how do you teach someone who's 20, who's and I know you like to mentor, but it's how do you teach someone and
so
how
you
do
bring
you
them
tell
on board?
Them, do you bring them to do the nonprofit or do you bring them on to do a for-profit?
So
you know what I'm saying? Because you can still do good things and setting up your business that's where I'm it's literally irrelevant. You still need everything, legal, website, all the other stuff that you need, and a business that will allow you to do your
magic,
to
right?
get your impact.
So I knew a long time ago, I wrote grants, I received grants on a national and a local level for years, and I've written DEF grants and received them, and some of those projects are still sustainable, like Dublin Tyco. I helped on grants in 2010 or 11, and they're still sustainable, and they just asked us for more money because they're coming into the 20th year. So those types of sustainable projects are so invigorating for me because I can use that, again, as that good housekeeping seal of saying, when you play your cards right and you become sustainable as a project, you are able to last, you have that longevity, and that's what we're always looking for.
That's basically your break-even point. That's your nonprofit way of saying break-even, right? It's where your cash outweighs your expenses.
Right, so for us anyway, when I talk to people, and going back to the question that you had of how do you teach your 20-somethings to do that, did you know I have summer interns?
I had no idea.
Okay.
I mean, and again,
do you want to
it's
be
like,
my intern, Ryan? I'd love for you
yes,
to be my
I would
intern.
love to be your intern. That would
You're
be
like,
amazing.
can you be my intern? Is
No,
what you'd like.
listen,
yeah.
you know what? At the end of the day, I believe in jobs. I don't know, internships to me are
imagine.
like, you
So
know.
it's an unpaid like internship, but I have had moms and or students who
Yeah.
have either heard me speak around town or maybe at Emerald campus if I've been asked to come do a networking talk, which my networking talk is what is the net worth of your network, which is kind of cool. You should probably help me think out how I can brand that for Cohatch.
I don't even,
right?
that sounds amazing. you
Isn't
know?
it good?
I mean, but
Yeah.
we'll do it personally.
Yeah, okay. So, but I would have a huge give back that whatever I did with that, if it was a book or something, I would want that to help. I would want to give back to Cohatch and a give back to DEF, right?
Yeah, and this is where
Yeah.
like we have our, and I know I'm
Yeah.
cutting it, but like
No.
we had all these nonprofits in a room, and like literally you came in, and I mean we had no organization. Jen and I were looking around, and we're like, and then you came and you're like, okay, everybody's giving one thing to one person. Everybody tell your story, and I'm like, oh my god, like genius, right? So then everybody
I don't know if it's
walked.
genius, but yeah.
Well, but
yeah.
everybody, again, I always say connecting dots, right? So it's like, you know, when you're really good at partnerships, you have 5 dots that you're trying to connect,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in the beginning, it's literally a hello, right? Like it's a.
It always
I
begins with a
have
hello.
need, right?
It begins with a hello.
Well, and that's where I
a
think,
Melissa
you know,
Bogner
to
thing,
me,
yeah.
that was like it's a very easy, basic way to, when you have 100 people in a room, to get through. And, you know, I think everybody left there with something. And if they didn't, then, you know, like they
And
have to give something too,
What,
right? So-
what we so much love, what DEF loves, is that model at that very first luncheon with the nonprofits that we had, and that was was that up at Polaris? Was that the Polaris
at
one?
Polaris, yeah.
When we first did that, you guys liked it enough. We didn't realize the impact that had on you or Jenna, right? So we just were like happy because we left the day with some great new friendships that we could work with. We circled back to people. Some of those kind of came through, and some of them, you know, it might have just been a one-time meetup, but those connections were made there, so they know they can always reach out to us and us to them. But from that, we had somebody from Cohatch take that sort of model, and then they had another luncheon,
Yeah.
and that was the focus of that luncheon. And it was everyone come with a problem to solve and a need, right? And then come with a resource. We did all of that in a couple of hours, and I think it was around Easter when we did that because there was a need for an Easter dinner. He had a nonprofit, and within that room, in 10 minutes, Easter dinner was covered between all of us. And it really was simple because all of us had a little spot and everybody dropped things off to the nonprofit. And
Well, okay, so I'm 50 years
yeah.
old, right? Like,
are you really? You look so young.
So I'm almost 50 years old. That's not
Yeah.
my point. My point isn't about the age.
Great
My
skin.
point is that like, I started Fire Rover, we started Cohatch, we started Mesh, we started all these, like, and again, I'm involved in all these.
Yeah.
But the reality is I'm learning from what you're doing. I'm learning what from everybody's doing. And like the
love
nonprofit
it.
teaches me about entrepreneurship, which again, I never, if you would have asked me 10 years ago before this, no, I mean, like, I look at it and like, I'm learning every freaking day, right? And like, to me, that's what I hope our members are doing. And it's like, so let me ask this question. What if you didn't have a Cohatch in your location? What would you do? Like,
Well,
so right
we
now
were-
you live in St. Louis as
Yeah.
an example. And it's like, there aren't any there. And, you know, what do you do? I mean, you know.
So you meet at kitchen tables. So I'll just tell you that, like in my work for over the last 30 years, I was
Yeah.
a PTO mom.
Yeah,
right?
what'd you do before this?
Yeah. So we met at schools. We met in kitchen tables. We met at the library. We met at a Starbucks or a Panera Bread.
But are
the
you
only
meeting a
thing
guy
is-
from IBM in your house?
No,
right?
that's the problem. Get out of your
You're meeting
basement.
similar people,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
You're meeting like all moms. Not bad. It's a PTA meeting. You put all your moms together, right? But
yeah.
then if you put
You
everybody
can't
in.
galvanize as well.
100%.
So for me anyway, the old model was get together in your like 40 square feet, right?
Yeah.
But really now it is the world. I mean, think about where we
Yeah,
come
it
from.
has to be,
The internet wasn't there when I first started PTO, right? Like we were
100%.
lucky to have a computer in our homes and a printer back in the 80s. So
I remember my dot matrix printer that would go.
I love I know. I had one in college.
One
Didn't you
color.
love it?
I mean, I guess.
I thought I was
At the time, I
special.
thought it was amazing.
Yeah,
right? My
I did
Mac was
too.
great. Now I have like this one. It's twice as heavy as the old one. I don't get it.
Yeah. So when we think of where we have come from and the availability, so you have to look at technology as tools and how has it helped us and how
100%.
has it maybe taken away some of our need to get together. So I think the human element of meeting face to face is still incredibly important because you get to know a person, right? I can get a
100%.
text from somebody or an email, but I don't really read that person until I meet them in person. That's what Cohatch does. So technologies can be great. I can have everything organized in the Google Doc, whatever, spreadsheets left and right, but that doesn't help me get to know the heart of the person that I'm going to be working with. So when we did the second luncheon that was just recent, last year around Easter time, I remember that we all sat in a room. None of us knew each other. We might have known 2 or 3 people, but we came from all the communities. So it wasn't just our people here. When we got to meet each other, we got to see the essence of who each other are. Now, granted, not everybody's for me, and I'm not for everybody. That's fine. But the people that you do meet, there are more people that have that common bond with you that do not. And I think that is a life rule. I think we have much more alike than we have different. And I think that Cohatch helps us find those likenesses. And if there's one thing that this world needs more than anything right now, it's more commonalities between our differences. So there's nothing wrong with having differences in how we lead, who we are, or the types of businesses we have, but finding the common threads between those, right? Cohatch brings the weft to the weave of what we have in our fabric. And if we can focus on that, the weft to the weave. Yeah. So I think that's really, really important for us to focus on. Cohatch can be so instrumental in how we overcome our differences. And I do not take that lightly because I know the state of our world right now, and we are in trouble. So I really think that we have to focus on all the good things.
So now we have definitely gone to the global thing. And
I think we are global problem solvers.
What I will say with Cohatch is that everybody doesn't have to get along, but everybody has to respect each other.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't have to. It's not a kumbaya. And that's what I want people to understand.
It's kumbaya
but
here.
I will say this.
I
will say that there are certain people, and a lot of times it's about timing, right? So when you're starting a business, that's when you need to network. That's when you need to learn. That's when you need the creativity. And again, a year in, you need people around for different reasons. And 5 years in, so that's where again, the Boost Scholarship we have is literally, we'll give you a boost. We're not doing it for you, right? And that's where I think a lot of people come in and they're like, well, no, you do whatever you do. You got to get out of the corner. You got to actually be a hustler. You got to get your own passion. And we'll help you find it, maybe. I mean, if you're enjoyable to hang out with,
you give me a room of hustlers, and I will find new avenues for their businesses because I see the light. A good example at the one, our networking event that was hosted by Cohatch here, and we had 3 upstarts that gave a pitch. It was the pitch event.
3 startups?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Dublin pitch event.
Yes, and that pitch event, we stopped in here, crowded, packed room, full of people that we did not know. Do you know that we now have a new board member, Christian Vid, comes from Fifth Third Bank. Yeah. We met him out here. I knew exactly where he was standing, but I wasn't talking to him first. I was talking to another group around him from Insperity. Yeah. So we were talking, and then he happened to be standing there. We exchanged cards. Having a business card helped us just to get our information out. Yeah. I am getting on LinkedIn now.
Well, I think 2 things. One, Christian's funny because I actually met him working at a Starbucks, right? 15 years ago.
Okay.
So we literally worked next to a Starbucks,
awesome.
Miserable, walking outside, trying. all the reasons why we needed a place to frickin' not be, And again, it's funny because I used to go to 5 different coffee places, and I'd buy 5 different coffees, and you feel obligated. I'm spending
you on all that caffeine. I want the picture.
Oh man, I used. But I think
You're still living off the caffeine.
When you look at it, it's all of those types of relationships come together, and I think to me that's. That's the hard thing, that you're taking advantage of it, right? And again, it's actually something where if you look at LinkedIn can only make connections,
right?
But in reality, you have to, you have to meet people, right? You can't just live online. I think we learned that during COVID, right? That one swing one way, but LinkedIn really does allow you with, this type of ability. It allows you to have a complete life, right?
Well, here's the thing that I would
say.
Especially
from a business and a volunteer perspective.
Yeah, and you have to, it's good to work hard, but you have to reward yourself. But the reward isn't from something you buy. You can't buy a reward for yourself. It has to be earned. I mean, I really believe
I
that.
think you can buy some rewards for
You
yourself.
can't, oh, like your latest, car,
No,
your
I don't.
cool shoes.
No, my God, I
don't
have
know.
bad car. Like that is. Oh, I'm being called out. But yes, no. I mean,
I think
anyways,
the
go.
things that really hit your heart are the
100%
things
are
that
the
you
reasons
earn.
we get up every morning.
Right, exactly.
Our kids. I
So
mean,
going back to that
so.
early point that you had. So when we met Christian, we found out other connections. So Melissa was at another event with her kids that night, so she couldn't be here, but she goes, oh, I know that name. His wife is in my wine group.
Yeah.
So there's that connection. He works for Fifth Third. I bank at Fifth Third personally.
It's
so
local.
all of those things. So now he sits on our board, and
Yeah.
we've met, and we have wonderful outtake conversations about that. So again, where do we meet? We meet here, right? That's our common place. That same evening, we met an author by the name of J.P. Mitchell with her children's book, and she presented here. So there were a couple of more technology-driven, right, pitches, and then she had a children's book. She happens to be a woman of color and is a teacher in Columbus Public Schools. Loved her, and I loved her passion. I would have probably never met her had she not been here.
For sure.
And people would probably say, really, you had like two innovation, kind of more STEM
we had
sort of
Apricity,
related things.
robotics, and then there was
And then
another
there was a
tech
children's
company.
book author.
Yeah, and then the children's
And
book
she
author.
did not win the pitch, but that evening, I said to her, you might not have won the pitch, but you won everyone's hearts. And she looked at me, and she and I are friends now. I went to her pitch event for her book when she launched her book. She has a song that goes with it, and I used my connections with some people that are in the early childhood and elementary community, in the reading and book writing community, to say, hey, do you happen to know this person? They do know her. So now the cogwheels are kind of starting, that it's the repeated, I wouldn't call it an announcement, but that the fact that her name as an author is continually circulating within the education community now broadens that reach. When the right thing happens, she is ripe and ready there. She has the connections, she has some of the outreach already established, and she's ready to go. So she's self-published right now. I see her taking that book, which is incredible, and going to the next level with it. And I do love that she is somebody who has self-started, and she's a hustler. I mean, she has worked so hard. I'm gonna support that person because they put their time and energy into it. I mean,
And
I'm just
again,
going to.
That's exactly the heart of who you are. So like with that, I will say, I'm gonna cry, so I can't cry, just kidding. Can't make me cry. But I will say, that's exactly what I wanted to share, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, with that, I think do you wanna close out or say some closing words or?
Well, I would have to say this, if there's any
Because again, this is
time-
not supposed to be a commercial for Cohatch, but it's a commercial for you, right? No, and the power of what you do on a daily basis with all your different businesses and all the different entrepreneurs you help. And first of all, you deserve credit for that. And it is all those people, you're making them greater, right? You're allowing them to live a better life. That's really what we're all
Well,
about.
I think we're all in the same basket together, and it is a jumbled basket sometimes, but we have to, we have to find our people. And if people will just commit to finding your people and try to really be inclusive versus leaving people out. Life is a competition, let's just be real about that, and I get it. But if we don't worry about edging out the competition and we focus on what we need to be doing essentially to bring out the best in not only ourselves, but the other people around us, then I think the cream rises to the top. I hope to be part of that cream. Sometimes I'm not, sometimes I am, and that's okay. And there's a lesson in that too. When we aren't always chosen for something, or we don't make our goal, we have to stand back and look at that and say, what is my lesson in life about this? I mean, we have to be a little retrospective
100%.
and say,
Monday morning quarterbacking.
yes, and it is absolutely the piece that we need to be a better version of ourselves. So however you do that, whether that's through a religious practice, whether that is reflecting on that just in your own worth, I think that's so important to just give gratitude. Start your day. Gratitude affects or impacts attitude, right? So that we can, bridge people to projects, resources to need. Oh, and that's, if I ever had a tattoo, that's what it would say. Bridge, seriously,
Well,
living
this is
in
getting
Dublin.
nuts, and so now you're going to tell
I'm
us
gonna
about
get a tat.
tattoo.
Yeah,
You're
no,
going to get a tat.
no, it's
You're
like
gonna get-
that's sort of my life thing.
No,
Is
I understand.
bridging
Say it
people to
again.
projects.
Bridge people to projects. I
And
connect
resources
dots,
to
right?
need.
Like, it makes
Period. Like
it
that's
makes
it.
sense efficiently.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you so much for
No,
your
my
time
God.
today.
Listen,
I
this
love
is-
sitting and just
It's so fun. I mean, we
have
could do
need-
this for 14 hours.
We
Let's
could.
start